I'm going to reminisce with you and share things you never knew happened during the 7 years we filmed more than 150 episodes of The Dukes of Hazzard. For years, fans believed the cast shared the same Southern charm and brotherly bond off-screen as they did in front of the camera. But one beloved actor drew a line he would never cross again. James Best, known for his unforgettable role as Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane, made a decision so final and personal that it shocked even those closest to the show. Now, the truth about what really happened is finally coming to light. To millions of viewers, James Best was the heartbeat of the Dukes of Hazzard. As Sheriff Roscoe, he was goofy, unpredictable, and endlessly quotable. His catchphrases and exaggerated mannerisms became part of the show's signature charm. Whether he was chasing the Duke boys in yet another doomed patrol car or scheming with Boss Hogg in the town square, Roscoe brought energy and warmth to every scene. Behind the comedic mask, however, the man who played him was far more serious. James Best was no ordinary television actor. Before donning the Hazzard County badge, he had already built a reputation as one of Hollywood's most dependable character actors. Over the years, he appeared in more than 600 television shows and dozens of films. He trained under the legendary Lee Strasberg, starred alongside James Stewart in Winchester 73, and held his own with Paul Newman in The Left-Handed Gun. He was also a respected acting teacher, mentoring future stars like Quentin Tarantino and Gary Busey. In short, James Best knew the industry inside and out. When James Best joined the Dukes of Hazzard, he didn't come just to play a silly sheriff. He brought with him decades of experience, professionalism, and a deep respect for the craft. While others might have seen the show as a fun paycheck, Best approached it with purpose. He shaped Roscoe into someone kids could laugh at, but also love, blending absurdity with heart. That balance wasn't accidental. Best rewrote dialogue, improvised gags, and constantly pushed for stronger material. He poured himself into the role, and most of the cast and crew respected that passion. Catherine Bach, who played Daisy Duke, often praised him for his mentorship, and Denver Pyle, who portrayed Uncle Jesse, shared his old-school values. There was laughter on set, but also a clear understanding that Best demanded a certain level of discipline. Not everyone met that standard. As the series grew more popular, tensions began to rise. Fame changed people. Egos clashed. For James Best, who had spent decades perfecting his art, there was one castmate whose behavior he simply couldn't tolerate. What began as professional friction became a breaking point that changed his relationship with the show forever. When people picture the Dukes of Hazzard, they think of bright sunlight, roaring V8 engines, and the mischievous Duke boys outsmarting Sheriff Roscoe. But behind that cheerful image lay tension that ran deeper than any back road in Hazzard County. On-screen camaraderie masked off-screen disagreements, and as the show's popularity soared, so did the friction. From its premiere, the series was a runaway hit. Ratings exploded, merchandise filled store shelves, and fans couldn't get enough. But for James Best, the sudden fame didn't bring unbridled joy. Trained by Lee Strasberg and grounded in a pre-glamour Hollywood work ethic, he approached acting with seriousness and discipline. That mindset sometimes clashed with younger cast members who treated scenes more like improv sessions or photo ops. Production moved fast. Lines were rewritten at the last minute, scenes rescheduled, and pressure grew for more stunts, more action, and more comedy. To many, it was exciting. To Best, it felt careless, as if artistry was being replaced by spectacle. He grew frustrated with missed cues, rushed rehearsals, and ego-fueled improvisation. Some days, he discovered that blocking rehearsals had been skipped altogether. Other times, cameras rolled while a co-star was still studying lines. It wasn't laziness. It was a looser attitude toward professionalism that grated against his disciplined instincts. Some cast members seemed to thrive amid the chaos, treating late starts and last-minute changes as part of the fun, or worse, as proof of their star power. Best's quiet disapproval didn't go unnoticed. A raised eyebrow here, a tense silence there. His subtle reactions revealed his disappointment. It created a fault line on set, separating those who valued precision from those who preferred spontaneity. To his credit, Best never exploded in anger or made a public scene. Instead, he withdrew, growing distant and reserved. Behind his calm demeanor was a storm of frustration, a sense that the integrity of the show was slipping away. The cast and crew noticed. Some sympathized. Others dismissed it, but no one could ignore it. While audiences saw laughter, speed, and slapstick on screen, life behind the camera was far more complicated. Best didn't want conflict. He simply refused to let chaos interfere with the work he loved. James Best was respectful, punctual, and fiercely protective of his craft. But behind the scenes, tensions simmered. Friendships began to strain, jokes grew sharper, and one person in particular became the focus of Best's growing concern. It wasn't just a personality clash. It was a crack in what had been sold to audiences as a warm, family-friendly environment. Every long-running series evolves, but few changed as noticeably as the Dukes of Hazzard, when the laughter started masking something else. Between takes, you could almost feel the fracture forming. By the fourth season, the line between the actors' on-screen personas and their real selves had begun to blur, and not in a good way. The charm and camaraderie that once defined the set were wearing thin for James Best. Beneath all the country humor and roaring car chases, something personal was festering. It didn't happen suddenly. It crept in slowly, quietly, until it became impossible to ignore. Best had always been known for his patience and professionalism, but even those have limits. As weeks went by, the change in him became more visible. He was still courteous, still prepared, but the joy that once lit up his performances was fading. His frustration lingered just beneath the surface, visible in the set of his shoulders, the tightness in his jaw, and the subtle restraint in his delivery. Crew members noticed. Something had changed. Then came the day when everything boiled over. It should have been a routine filming day. A simple scene that required timing and coordination, the kind of setup Best always came to fully prepared for. His lines were memorized, his marks rehearsed, his timing flawless. But one of his co-stars was late. Not just late to the call sheet, late and unprepared. No lines ready, no focus, no apology. Witnesses said. Best's face froze in disbelief. At first, he tried to handle it quietly, pulling the actor aside for a private word. But the exchange didn't stay private for long. The tone shifted. Voices rose, not shouting but sharp, cold, and deliberate. Those nearby later said the confrontation turned deeply personal. For Best, who had spent his life honoring the craft of acting, the incident struck at something far deeper than professional annoyance. What might have seemed like casual joking or carelessness to one person felt to him like mockery, an insult to the discipline and respect he believed every actor owed their work. Then, without a word of anger or drama, James Best did something no one expected. He set down his script, turned, and walked off set. Not storming out, not slamming doors, just leaving, silent and calm. The set went still. Production ground to a halt. The air hung heavy with shock. This wasn't a stunt or a threat. It was a man drawing a boundary, and doing so with a finality that shook everyone who saw it. Producers tried to smooth things over behind closed doors. Phone calls were made, meetings arranged, but James Best wouldn't budge. He agreed to return, but not under the same conditions, and certainly not with that castmate in the same room. The show adapted. Scenes were rewritten, schedules rearranged, and though viewers at home never suspected a thing, everyone on set knew the shift had taken place. From that day forward, there were quiet new rules, an unspoken understanding that James Best would finish what he started, but never again beside the person who had crossed the line. For fans, the idea of any tension among the Dukes of Hazzard cast seemed impossible. The series had always been built on the illusion of unity and family. On screen, Sheriff Roscoe bumbled around with his lovable charm, while Bo, Luke, Daisy, Uncle Jesse, and Enos felt like pieces of the same down-home puzzle. So when rumors began circulating in the early 2000s that James Best had once refused to work with a co-star ever again, it left fans stunned and curious. Who could possibly have caused such a rift with someone so kind-hearted and professional? Speculation spread quickly. Some pointed to Tom Wopat and John Schneider. the Duke boys themselves, both of whom had famously clashed with producers over pay and creative control, even walking off the show during the 5th season. Wopat, with his strong opinions, had a reputation for being headstrong. Schneider, though more easygoing, was still learning how to navigate fame. Could one of them have stepped on Best's toes? Others suspected Ben Jones, the actor behind Cooter Davenport. Jones had his own public disagreements with production and temporarily left the show during season 2. His outspoken nature and political beliefs made him a frequent target of fan theories. Catherine Bach's name even came up, though those who worked on the show dismissed that rumor immediately. She and Best had always been friendly, and she often called him a true professional and a joy to work with. Then there was Sonny Schroyer, who played Deputy Enos Strait. To many, that idea seemed absurd. Roscoe and Enos were practically inseparable on screen. Their chemistry was the heart of the show's comedy, filled with banter, physical humor, and genuine warmth. Schroyer often described Best as a mentor, and at conventions and interviews, the two appeared side by side, smiling and reminiscing. Yet, attentive fans noticed something subtle, an occasional stiffness between them, a quiet distance that didn't fit their on-screen bond. There were no public arguments or angry words, just silence, controlled, polite, and unmistakably deliberate. For years, no one quite knew what to make of it. As time passed and more people from the production began speaking openly, hints emerged. Crew members described an unspoken tension between Best and one co-star. When fans rewatched episodes closely, some noticed a pattern. Roscoe and Enos's scenes together often felt brief or disconnected, sometimes even pieced together from separate takes. Still, the truth remained elusive until much later, when a series of interviews and recollections quietly confirmed what had long been whispered. The name that finally surfaced surprised nearly everyone. It wasn't a notorious troublemaker or someone with a big ego. It was Sonny Schroyer, the actor behind the kind-hearted Deputy Enos. The revelation stunned fans, not because Schroyer had a reputation for conflict, but precisely because he didn't. The two men who had created one of television's most beloved duos had, behind the camera, grown apart in ways that no one could have guessed. Accounts from those close to the show painted a picture of a slow, painful unraveling. It wasn't one explosive argument or a single betrayal. It was a steady erosion of trust, a buildup of small frustrations that eventually led to something James Best couldn't ignore. Those who knew him said the issue came down to one thing: respect. Or, in Best's eyes, the lack of it. At a time when James Best was giving everything he had to the Dukes of Hazzard, reworking dialogue, refining his delivery, and staying late to perfect every bit of timing, Sonny Schroyer began to show signs of disengagement. He arrived late more often, came to set less prepared, and joked during rehearsals in ways that Best felt undercut the tone of the work. One moment in particular became quietly infamous among the crew. During a scene that had already gone through several rewrites, Schroyer made what was described as a mocking remark about Best's perfectionism. Best didn't respond with anger, but witnesses said his entire demeanor changed. The smile disappeared, the conversation stopped, and something in him seemed to shut down. To outsiders, it might have looked like a trivial disagreement, but for Best, it struck a nerve. The comment wasn't just careless, it felt disrespectful to the craft he had dedicated his life to. For a man shaped by the discipline and hierarchy of old Hollywood, that moment marked a breaking point. In private, Best told producers he would no longer share scenes with Schroyer. From then on, directors were instructed to work around it. Fans watching at home never noticed, but in the production notes, script adjustments, and blocking instructions, the distance was deliberate and permanent. On screen, Roscoe and Enos still shared the same world, but rarely the same frame. Even after the show ended, the rift remained. During reunion specials and fan conventions, the two men appeared together but kept their distance. They smiled for cameras, signed autographs, and spoke kindly of one another. But there was a polite formality that fans couldn't quite put their finger on. Schroyer continued to call Best a mentor in interviews, while Best himself never named names or spoke ill of anyone. He carried the disappointment quietly, honoring a personal code of professionalism that few ever truly understood. This was never a feud of shouting matches or public scandal. It was quieter than that, sadder, a bond eroded by misaligned values and a deep, unspoken sense of betrayal. When the truth finally emerged, it didn't feel like gossip. It felt like a window into the heart of a man who had poured everything into his craft and simply asked for the same respect in return. For fans, learning that the castmate Best refused to work with was Sonny Schroyer, the gentle, soft-spoken actor behind Deputy Enos Strait, was almost unthinkable. On screen, Roscoe and Enos were inseparable, finishing each other's sentences, crashing patrol cars, and delivering some of the show's funniest and most heartfelt moments. Their chemistry seemed effortless. But behind the laughter, something was quietly breaking. In the later seasons, the shift became noticeable to those paying close attention. Scenes featuring Roscoe and Enos grew shorter. There were fewer shared close-ups, fewer moments of playful banter. Often, one would be shot alone while the other's dialogue was recorded separately. Crew members who had been there described how it started small, missed rehearsals, casual jokes, moments of improvisation that Best saw as unprofessional. Schroyer, still relatively new to the industry, treated the show with a light-hearted ease. Best, on the other hand, brought with him the discipline of a man trained by Lee Strasberg, someone who had shared the screen with legends like James Stewart and Paul Newman. Every line, every gesture mattered. To him, acting wasn't about fame or fun, it was about integrity. And when that integrity felt compromised, even unintentionally, he stepped back. Not out of ego, but out of principle. James Best expected professionalism, preparation, and above all, respect. During one scene he had spent hours refining, Sonny Schroyer reportedly made an offhand joke about not sweating the small stuff. It was meant to lighten the mood, but Best didn't laugh. Those nearby recalled that he gave a small, tight nod, said nothing, and walked off set soon after. That was the moment everything changed. From then on, Best decided he would no longer share direct scenes with Schroyer. The production team, caught off guard, adjusted quietly. Scripts were rewritten, blocking was rearranged, and editors stitched together shots to make it appear that Roscoe and Enos were still working side by side. For the audience, the illusion held, but for those on set, the separation was unmistakable. Over time, even longtime viewers began to sense the subtle distance between the two. Neither man ever spoke publicly about the rift. Schroyer continued to refer to Best as a mentor, and Best never addressed the matter directly. When asked about his favorite castmates, he often mentioned Denver Pyle, Sorrel Book, and Catherine Bach, but rarely, if ever, Sonny Schroyer. Their silence spoke volumes. It wasn't a dramatic feud or a scandal. It was something quieter and far more personal, a breach of trust, a line crossed that could never be uncrossed. For James Best, a man defined by dignity, discipline, and respect for his craft, that meant everything. When James Best passed away in 2015 at the age of 88, tributes poured in from around the world. Fans remembered him not only as Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane, but also as a teacher, painter, father, and friend. Colleagues and students alike described him as generous, talented, and fiercely professional. The Dukes of Hazzard remains one of television's most iconic series, and Sheriff Roscoe remains one of its most beloved characters. But Best's true legacy goes far beyond the patrol car and the catchphrases. He was a man who brought integrity and artistry to a role that could have easily been played for simple laughs. He turned Roscoe into a character with warmth, humor, and heart. The quiet conflict that shadowed his time on the show was never the centerpiece of his story, but it was a part of it. And perhaps that's what makes his legacy so deeply human. Best wasn't interested in gossip or grudges. He didn't seek attention or revenge. He simply drew a boundary, stood by it, and let his work speak for itself. For longtime fans, knowing the truth behind the tension adds depth to both the man and the show. It's a reminder that even behind the lighthearted charm of television, real people bring real emotions to their work. Sometimes the people who make us laugh the most carry the heaviest burdens. In the end, James Best's story isn't one of bitterness. It's one of grace. His professionalism never wavered, his dedication never faltered, and his impact continues to ripple through the world of acting and beyond. The truth he carried quietly and respectfully remains a lasting lesson in dignity and in standing firm for what truly matters.